never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi guys, welcome back to my Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Press that little subscribe button down there. Got amazing guests here. And it's just, I'm actually so honored to have made contact with people who really are out there to change the world and make this world a better place. And today's no exception because of Victoria Volk with me. Victoria has been for years now out there, and one book at a time, one interview at a time, is out there and is leaving a legacy. And so therefore, I'm so honored to have her on my show. Welcome. I wanted to say willkommen, automatically using the German words. Well, here you go. Willkommen, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me. And actually, the area in which I live, they call it the Iron Curtain.
The Iron Curtain? Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Where is that?
Very German. Yeah.
All right.
Hague. The town in which I live is called Hague.
Okay.
Hague. Yeah.
Well, here you go.
Are you familiar with Lawrence Welk?
No, not yet.
Oh, he was a huge German polka music. I mean, he was the polka music icon, and he was born and raised 13 miles from where I live. So, very German.
I was about to say, well, polka, that is typically, as soon as you hear that, you see me running for the door. Okay, so give me rock and roll, give me any kind of other music, okay, apart from maybe rap and techno. But no, polka, I draw a line. Oh my goodness. Here we are laughing, and that is exactly the way we should be, isn't it? But today's topic is really is a bit of an interesting one, because we could talk about so many things with you. You're an established author. You're a woman who has been trying to make a difference for the world for some time. Therefore, you have grown, and there are many aspects of life that we could explore. But let's talk today about the boundaries, and let's talk maybe about the problem of us trying to be nice and trying to be kind, especially to family members or people who are close to us. And in reality, instead of being kind, we're actually enabling behavior that maybe needs to be called out, that needs to be addressed. I think that is one of the hardest things for me. I can maybe do that easier with someone I don't know, but when it comes to your own family, when it comes to the people you love, I'm still crap at that. It's a thing that I'm still learning the hard way. So therefore, I'm so pleased that you are here and that we can explore that. And maybe I can learn from you a little bit. What is your take on things? But you don't wake up, as a teenager, think, what shall I do? What shall I do with my life? Oh, I know. I'm gonna become a grief counselor, a specialist in grief, and maybe whilst I'm there, I talk about enabling behaviors. Nah. I mean, how did you grow up? What was your vision of yourself when you were a 12-year-old?
Yeah, I can tell you, I didn't picture myself sitting in the chair I'm sitting in and talking on a podcast or having a podcast of my own, much less writing a book about my experience or doing any of the things that I'm doing now. I didn't see it as a kid. And I think it's because of all of the grief and trauma that I experienced as a child from a very young age. And from the age of 6.5, 7, my father was sick with cancer. So was my grandmother, which was my mother's mom. So within a very short period of time, my mother lost her mother, her husband, and then remarried. And also her oldest daughter moved away, who was a very much a huge support to my mother and also to me, because she was like a second mom, because she was 9 years old. She's 9 years older. And so there was a lot of change and uncertainty in a short amount of time. And then I was sexually abused. And so just from, grief is cumulative and it's cumulatively negative. And so from a very young age, my grief had just been stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. So if you would have asked me at 12, which was also a year that I had been abused, I don't know that I even wanted to be, I didn't even want to be in my own body, much less where I was standing in my home. I very much disconnected from myself at that point. And like grief does, it does create a disconnect from ourselves. It puts this veil over our eyes where we stop seeing ourselves clearly. So we stop seeing other people clearly. And we can get so easily stuck in this victim mindset, which is where I was for many years, over 30 years. I even have a chapter of it in my book, The Victim Mindset. And when this happens, it can manifest in different ways for all of us, but in a lot of ways, very similarly. Either we implode or we explode. So we may resort to behaviors that help us feel better for a short period of time, like alcohol or shopping or gambling or sex or fantasy or social media, things like that. Or we can explode. So we might be very angry with other people. We might have physical symptoms, actually. We might experience migraines. And so that's the implode. And the explode is, these outward behaviors. Implode is basically disease. And disease, if you think about disease, the word disease, it's dis-ease in the body. And so through the years in progressing through my own grief and trauma and resorting to alcohol and relationships and things that were just very unhealthy for me. I didn't have the coping skills. I didn't have the education or the knowledge in how to deal and process with my trauma and grief, like most of us don't receive when we are born, right? Because as parents, we resort to what we know. And so if we did not receive that education, we're passing down exactly what we learned as kids. And so that generational pattern and cycle continues. And this is why you see patterns of alcoholism in families and these repeated behaviors, because we learn by seeing as children. And we're sponges. And actually, by the age of 3, we've learned 75% of what we will learn in how to cope and respond to life. And by age 15, we've learned the rest. And so pair that with the frontal lobe not being fully developed until you're like 25. There's a lot of opportunities for us to create grief and suffering onto ourselves, right? Much less if we don't have guidance and tools and things shown to us and given to us.
And it's so common. When you look around, there is so much of the same story repeating. Now, some of the stories are obvious as hell. That is, unfortunately, as a doctor, as an anesthetist, many flow-on effects from those facts that you have just mentioned, i.e. the domestic violence, the fractured mandibles of fights, the putting the hand through glass, and most of the time the glass wins, those kind of things. But they are far more common than that. And that's the tip of the iceberg that I see. But when you actually look at the people, the normal quotation people around you, and you put them under stress, or they find themselves under stressful situations, even without anyone doing anything, sometimes behavior changes. And sometimes you see a different version of that person coming out and under distress, or maybe even then under huge stress, this regression happens towards maybe showing the victim mentality, showing the outward explosion all those kind of things. So if you actually look at it, it is so common. I mean, you could argue that virtually everyone out there has had their share of trauma. Some of us are really good in that and accumulate a lot of it, and maybe then also become really experts in the coping skills that you've mentioned. Did alcohol become a coping skill for you yourself?
It did. It did. I knew every drink special every night of the week.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that is what we do. We do.
Yes.
And in all fairness, it helps there and then for that microsecond. The relief that comes from pouring down that glass, the second glass typically, when your shoulders start relaxing, and there's this when you finally started to escape your reality. That's beautiful. So those of you who are still out there and drinking, you guys probably recognize what I've just been talking about. The problem is you've got the underlying problems not going away. And often enough being compounded. So now you're not only anxious, the next morning you have got hangover and anxiety, and I call it in my book hangxiety. There you go. So shit, that doesn't go away.
And guilt and shame.
Oh yeah, the evil twins. I love them. Oh, I was so good in them. So between the kind of poor me, victim mentality, and then all that loaded upon, wow, what an devilish roller coaster of darkness. I mean, this was really, that was my life. But I only saw that really way down the line. How was it for you? Did you get glimpses of those kind of things? Did you experience your emotions, your feelings? Or were these just waves of neurochemicals that were washing you around like a cork in a stormy sea?
I did not see it because I was so in it.
Oh.
And it wasn't until, I should have been fired from my job. I was late so many times and hungover. And my job was like, I was a phlebotomist. So I had to stick people with needles. Like, my goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Right. I worked at a blood bank, and, it's a blessing they didn't, though, because I think that would have been probably my breaking point. If I would have lost my job, I think I would have really downward spiraled at that point. But my license was almost suspended. I had a lot of fender benders and speeding tickets, and I was just a train wreck, and I didn't see it. And no one around me was telling me, hey, I think you might have a problem.
May I challenge you there?
Mm-hmm.
I think with hindsight, many of the people around me tried to challenge me. Never in a maybe 2-3 times face to face, bang, come on, Stephan. But in roundabout ways, they wanted to be there for me, and I probably rejected them and refused help, believing no, there's nothing wrong with me. Was that maybe the same for you?
It could have been. I don't recall like a sit down or anything like that. You know what I mean? But I think, were there probably whispers behind my back? Probably. But I think I actually hid a lot of, basically my roommate and I were two peas in a pod. And so I had a partner in crime. And so I really didn't have to hide. I didn't have to hide it from her, right? Because she was my partner in crime. And I think when it came to work, I became really good at pretending I had it together. Mm-hmm.
Of course. Oh, that sounds so familiar. Shit. Sooner or later, though, that kind of I have it together pretends that mask slips, and is you are not in a stable kind of pattern. Typically, I mean, certainly most people that I talk to, that slope is like that. And you're soon sliding faster and faster and faster. So whilst you described yourself there as a high functioning alcoholic, and you could say that is an oxymoron, just functioning alcoholic, maybe. When did things come to a crunch, or were there multiple little crunches?
Well, fortunately, and I honestly, in hindsight, I can't even tell you what prompted me or what it was, but I decided to try hypnotherapy.
Nice.
I went to see a hypnotherapist,
Mm-hmm.
and some deep-seated stuff about my father's death came up, but I didn't feel like and actually also what came out of that was I found the courage through, I think I maybe had 2 sessions with this lady. I found the courage in myself to end a really toxic relationship,
Wow.
long distance relationship. And so, that was the catalyst. I think that, and I don't know how it came about, but, it's like, I am a firm believer that one conversation can change your life.
Mm.
And, around that same time, then, because I became available, I had ended that relationship. A longtime friend of mine came out of the woodwork and was a bit of a knight in shining armor. And we've now been married almost 20 years and have 3 kids. So, yeah. So he really turned me back to having a relationship with God, which I had rejected for many, many years. And slowly but surely, I began to fill that spiritual part of myself that had been so depleted, and started to find a way out. But it really took, and that was 2001. But it wasn't until 2019, honestly, that I addressed my grief. Yeah. It still took me. In 2017, I self-published my book. In 2014, I call that my unraveling, because my youngest was starting kindergarten. I had decided to close a business that I poured my heart and soul into. Yeah. And, I found all of these old things coming back up that I'd never addressed. And so I thought I was crazy. I thought I was very much isolating myself. I took every personality assessment I could find, because I just thought, if I could just understand myself better, like, what is this? What missing piece am I missing? Like, what am I missing here? Like, why can't I figure my shit out? Why does this pattern keep repeating? I was a raging mom. And yeah, it wasn't until 2019 where I discovered grief recovery. I went to Google, but I had more losses in between there. I had a very significant loss. My father's brother was diagnosed with brain cancer, and I had not seen him since my father's funeral. So when my dad had passed away, I not only lost my father, but his entire family. The communication just completely cut off. So I had not actually seen my uncle, and him and my father were really close. I hadn't seen him it was 30 years, almost to the day of my father's funeral. And I went to the hospital to see him, and that was a very transformative experience. And we had 6 months of reconnecting. And yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, I think, for both of us. And that, yeah, that was really that. And I lost a friendship that meant a lot to me. And I just thought, I'm really sick of this grief crap. I want to learn how to deal with this, and I want to help people deal with it themselves, because I knew how impactful it had been all my life, over 30 years. So.
Wow. It's weird. Whilst you're telling me all these beautiful, intimate details about your own destruction, I guess, self-destruction, you make me reflect constantly, and maybe to a degree that I have underestimated the amount of trauma that I had. I knew I had more than my fair share, but fuck me, this is, whilst you were talking, I said, yeah, tick, 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 tick. I needed two hands to tick, There was a lot of ticking going on. And then that only shows that trauma doesn't need to be your best friend blown up on a battlefield in front of you and you wearing his innards on your face. That's the obvious stuff, but trauma comes in so many disguises, but it still has a profound impact every single time, especially when you have not yet been privileged to get that catalytic kind of thing happening that finally makes you sit up and realize that what you have been doing, the way you have been acting, the way you have been behaving, was actually a part of the problem and making things not better, actually worse. Bloody hell. It's interesting that you say, here I was, 2017, I wrote my book. And then only 2019 did I actually see the reality of it. That in its own right is also of paramount importance, guys, because trauma comes in layers, healing comes in layers. And you started the healing process. You started the healing process quite some time ago. But it took you basically 20 years now from getting out of that initial toxic relationship, getting slowly better, and then life interferes. And then the next bout of, oh shit, a realization happens. And you maybe get the chance again to address now a different part of grief or a different part of trauma. I guess that's life. So sorry, guys out there, if you were waiting here to hear that magic, oh, wow, there it is. She did hypnotherapy, 1 session, cured, brilliant. Brilliant, no. And we are also not having a special on that pill where you just take a week of a pill and then you're all better. I'm sorry, we all run out of that and together with the miracle ones, okay? So, my goodness. Is that if we now say this is actually a lifelong journey to heal, to grow, to transform, bloody hell, are we not pushing people away by saying so? Is there hope out there, for crying out loud? There
is. And, I want to mention too, like alcohol didn't go away after 2001, because becoming a parent and an entrepreneur really brought up all of my insecurities and all of my self-worth issues and all of that. And so alcohol definitely became a way I coped as a mother who felt like they were failing in all kinds of ways. So that's been an ongoing journey and process. But when I don't want to leave people feeling like I did, in that, well, I guess I'm just meant for a life of suffering. And that's really what I had been feeling like. And, there's no magic pill. There's no, I can tell you that grief recovery changed my life. And I am not mincing words when I say that, because it was the one thing, and it is the only evidence-based program for Moving Beyond Grief, the only evidence-based program. It was and has been the only thing that has helped me address what has been emotionally incomplete in every single relationship that I have, whether it's my parents, dead or alive, whether it's my relationship with alcohol or money or my inner child. The tools that I gained from grief recovery literally have been the gift that have kept on giving. And so when I'm walking someone else through the process that I went through myself and continue to utilize, I had someone, actually my client just last night this is how he described it. And he's in his 60s. So he's had a lot of years to accumulate grief, right? And he described the program in this short sentence. And he said, this program has opened me up to the past, but it also has opened me up to the future.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And I said, can I use that as a testimonial? Because literally that I could have said the exact same thing. And I truly have found my calling and my passion, and I've been living to my potential because I addressed the grief.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm very sorry, Victoria. I will have to steal that because that is so beautiful. It is in one sentence. It actually describes what we are doing, because you're by facing the reality, the brutal reality of your own life, by actually looking at the facts under the cold light of a day, that allows you to grow. And when we say, when there's this nice saying, the past is the past, it has gone, live in the moment. That's all very true. And we want you to be mindful. We want you to live every second as the gift that it is. At the same token, if there is a lot of emotional baggage there, that is holding you back, that is holding you down. So
in some aspects of your life, here's the thing, you could have asked me at different points throughout my life how I was doing or how I felt about my life, and I would have said, I'm doing pretty good. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Oh, how beautiful. But okay, is that the alcoholic in you that is saying, because 95% of alcoholics will say, or of addicts will say, no, there's nothing wrong with me. And they even believe that. The denial is part of the disease of addiction. Or is that actually also part of the disease of life? That we try to keep up these masks, that we try to even people like you and me who have suffered from a lot of trauma, is that our last mask to hold on to. We will not let go of that pretense that everything is all right, to a degree that we even believe it is true.
We will say, I'm fine, whether we are pounding a 6-pack or going to yoga class. You know what I mean? Like, very true. Or writing a book about your own grief journey. Because at 2014, 2015, around 2016, 17, I would have said I was in a good place. I would have felt pretty good about myself and about my life, right? But we don't see how we are showing up in the world to our kids, how we parent, how productive we are in our work, how we show up in how much purpose we feel we have in our lives or passion. We don't see that any of those areas that are lacking for you are rooted in grief and likely from your past and your childhood.
And that's so important to say, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't see what is not immediately in front of you. The denial is not necessarily an active state of, no, I pretend everything is all right. No, you actually believe it, because you're not looking underneath the carpet and see what's hidden underneath there. That is the key thing that you just said.
And while we're putting on that charade, right, people around us, especially our family, aren't going to call us out on anything that they maybe see, because we think they've got it under control, or they've convinced, you can become a pretty good convincer, manipulator of words, right? When you've had 30 years experience trying to convince yourself, right?
Very true. Very true.
You've worked many years to convince yourself. So, it's become second nature to convince other people, right? So we can't see the label from inside the jar. It's not even, we don't know what we don't know, which is true. And I actually said that last night to my client, because we can, and that definitely applies with relationship to other people, because we often, especially acquaintances or things like that, someone pisses you off, someone does something, says something, you take offense to it, or you feel like you were a victim of that person or something they did or said. We never ask and pause to ask ourselves, what is it in them that is causing them to treat me that way?
So true. So important.
Oh, you kind of froze.
Oh, am I? Am I still frozen? You were a bit frozen. Am I still frozen?
Not frozen anymore.
Okay. My internet connection is unstable, which is intriguing. Okay. So let's not speak for a moment. I do a sound clap. What was the last? You were talking, so I think I got you very clear, but obviously what went out from me did not work. So give me 5 seconds, sound clap, and then I continue. And let me just think for a moment. You were saying, what were we saying? You were just talking.
We don't know what we don't know, but we can't see the label from inside the jar.
I like that, actually. It's a really nice metaphor. Okay. Give me 5 seconds. You can't see the label from within the jar. What a beautiful metaphor. And that is so, so true. I mean, there's a pitfall, though, also. I mean, sometimes if we now look at others with those glasses, we can always find reasons why they behave the way they behave, or why, therefore, you behaved like you behave. However, I mean, there's a pitfall there, certainly for me, that I become too empathic, that I actually become too focused on, oh yeah, they have got a poor childhood, they've got that, oh my God, no, okay. And then you become so accepting of a behavior that maybe should not be accepted. Where do you draw that line? How do you draw that line in the first instance?
I'm so glad the conversation went here, because as an empath myself, and as a child, I was an emotional, energetic sponge and required a lot of sleep. I slept a lot. And it wasn't until like in the past, since 2019, I got my Reiki masters, and I do sound healing now, and just learning about energy itself. And as an empath, that's been huge for me in learning about how our emotions are energy, and how to protect myself from not attaching to other people's stories, from not feeling like I am their savior, or that I need to fix them. It's not my job. And so this is where we talk about boundaries. And I wouldn't have known a boundary if it slapped me in the face until I went through grief recovery.
Shit. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh God, again. Tick, 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 tick. And it's so hard because it is, in order to see behaviors of others for what they are, we actually have to learn a bit about feelings and emotions in ourselves.
Bingo.
And exactly. So there is a lot of work to be done there. And in all fairness, there's this joke about men. Hey, we have feelings. Sometimes we feel hungry. Sometimes we feel thirsty, So yeah, unfortunately, I was a bit like that. I could not name those waves that were washing over me. I was like Pavlov's dog. Here, someone rang a bell and I started drooling, or someone pressed a button and I exploded. So that was me for a long time in my life. How did you come towards your realizations about the need to set boundaries? What brought that home to you? What was the factor where you actually said, maybe I have become an enabler. Maybe I have become part of the problem rather than part of the solution?
I had to take responsibility for what I experienced in my life. I had to own my emotional response to others and to what I experienced in my life. I had to take emotional responsibility for myself.
Nice.
Sweep my own doorstep. And when I started to do that, I really started to understand myself and learn. That's when I really learned about myself. Like, grief recovery helped me to see the patterns. It helped me to see the root of where these certain things were repeating in my life. And awareness is the first step, right? And any change that we make. And so that was huge for me, just having the self-awareness, living consciously, and understanding that because I'm in relationship with others, that I do have a responsibility and a role, because it, like they say, it takes two to tango, right? There's always two people in a relationship, whether it's with money, career, what you can insert anything. You take you everywhere you go. So what is your responsibility in those relationships? Where have I allowed other people? Yeah,
absolutely. You're so right.
Yeah.
I was about to show you my books, My Steps to Sobriety, and I demystified the 12 steps of the AA system or similar systems, and the step 4 is exactly about that. And it is a step where you take a brutal inventory of yourself. You really shine the light inside of you. And this was the hardest step for me, in all fairness, because you've got all these mental constructs that make you more the saint in your own thing. You distort the reality just a little bit, so that basically everything is someone else's fault. I was very good in that, I'll tell you guys. And then when you actually start truly making lists, and I always take the resentment list, for example. Resentment lists are very simple. You write 3 columns, leave a bit space on that side, and then you write, okay, you resent that person. That's what he has done. That's how he made you feel. And you can write pages. I could write pages. There are a lot of people who had done me wrong. Okay, fair call. And then as part of your journey, you move a little bit on, and then someone guides you back to that list, and now adds a fourth column on there and says, okay, so we have got that situation there. Where were you in that situation? What role did you play? And then suddenly you have to say, oh, and that is when you truly, truly recognize that you are not necessarily the victim, that you're actually part of the problem. And that is when you start to allow yourself to grow, because you have found the chink in your armor that you were not aware of. And now you can start patching that chink up. It will never be the same strength, and you will always have that scar in there. But like kintsugi, the Japanese art of fixing porcelain with gold glue, you create something new that is incredibly beautiful. Maybe no longer as functional and as strong in that particular area, but incredibly beautiful. And that is the chance that you have got with your own life. And that's a chance that communication with others and retrospection and self-inspection allows you. But guess what I've just said? These are all actually active steps. Active steps. This is not just you sitting back and pondering. This is actually taking action and being willing to actually go out there and face that animal, those emotions, those feelings. Oh God, I hated them. I hated to learn about my feelings. How was that for you? Did you have a similar antipathy to feeling session? Did you ever do sessions like that? In rehab, we do that. 10 o'clock in the morning, it's feelings, where you basically sit around in a circle. And the rules are that you're not allowed to disguise yourself. So no sunglasses, no hat, nothing in your hands, just you and your emotions. Fuck, that was brutal. How was your journey there? How did you actually get to know your emotions and how you tick?
Well, I knew anger pretty well by the time I had gotten to grief recovery. So that one was really anger. Yeah, that's a big one for me. And, in grief recovery, we say that resentment is a poison you take hoping that someone else dies.
Ooh, love it, love it, love it.
And I knew resentment too. Yeah. So, that bitterness that it really just eats away and chips away at your soul and your spiritual self connection. And if we can start to look at the different pieces of our lives that have contributed to wherever we are currently, and look at it for what it is, you can start to see and learn from those experiences. But unless you're willing to look at it, unless you're always going to say, the past is the past, I don't have to dig up the past, it happened in the past. Like people say that all the time. And it's like, the past is the present until it is addressed, healed, worked through, looked at, whatever adjective you want to put in there.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that is so true. We all know those people, and at times we have been those people. But it is very, very hard. And many people are not ready to do so. I know that certainly my mother and I had an incredibly not nice relationship. And there was a lot of mental health problems and probably a decent personality disorder on her behalf. But I know the amount of trauma that she has gone through in her life was tremendous. And she refused to deal with that. She refused to talk about it. And it's hard. It is really, really hard. And it is what it is. So people might not be ready to face the truth, to face their own demons. Yet, I mean, what do you do if there's someone in your family who is behaving like that? You finally got the emotional insight yourself to realize what is actually happening. And you have got a strong suspicion that that person is suffering from the flow-on effects of trauma in their past, but is now refusing to take any steps whatsoever and is continuing in a self-destructive behavior, and maybe often enough not self-destructive, but destructive to the family, what do you do?
I think before I answer that, I want to go back to 5 words you said, a sentence you said. It is what it is. And so many people will say that. It is what it is. Like, in it, to me, what I hear when I hear that is, that happened. I can't change it.
Yeah.
But what is the emotional truth of how that made you feel? Because although there may be, and I'll use what you shared as an example, although there may have been mental health challenges, that doesn't change the fact that however she treated you or showed up for you or didn't show up for you, there would have been a disconnect, an emotional disconnection there. And how did that make you feel? How did that impact your life? Because regardless of the circumstances of why that occurred, we cannot dismiss how those things made us feel. And when sometimes the reason can be a way that we bypass and dismiss our own emotions. And so I wanted to circle back to that. It is what it is. We need to look at those things that we say that about, because there is emotional residue there. And when it comes to other people in our lives who are refusing to look at their past and reflect and introspect, and you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But you can put boundaries in place so that your self wellness is not sacrificed, but you can still show up for those people with compassion and love, but with boundaries. And so that's why boundaries are so important. How to communicate those, how to stick to them, and really look at your values. So many of us don't live our lives based on our own values. We dishonor our own values.
Yep.
And everyone has their own values.
Very nicely said. Very nicely said. I think this is the key to it. But it's so hard to do all those insights in a hectic, fast-paced life that constantly challenges you. And sometimes we are on slave drivers, so to speak. We are using their own whip on ourselves. I've always been a workaholic. I've always thrown myself into any kind of work, any kind of thing. I can get myself easily lost in 16 hours of work. Exactly. Why? Because then I don't have to face the trauma. So it's just as much as an escapism, and then maybe my alcohol was. So maybe it's just another addiction, and therefore workaholic is actually very fitting for me. Yeah, great. It brought me a long way in my job, in those things that I do. But do I take the time to reflect and to review, to see what impact my emotions have on me, what impact others have on me? And it's intriguing what you said. It is what it is, because I use that a lot. But I use that in a positive way, because after all, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So as a means of me not being resentful about something, because I have no control over what has just happened to me, but I've got a control over how I feel about it. But what you're saying is take that one step further. Yes, acceptance is very important, but don't believe for a moment that this acceptance and that whatever has just happened to you will just wash over you like water off a duck's back. Rather, it will leave you with another new mental scar that needs to heal and that maybe you need to address. I think that is the big difference, or bringing these two thought patterns together and letting them merge into a constructive reality.
Yes.
Mm. Wow. Damn, you make me think, girl. More importantly, you make me feel.
And grief recovery too, like with workaholism and all of these behaviors that we resort to feel better and to avoid and to stuff away and what have you. We call them STERBs, short-term energy relieving behaviors. And so, yeah, if you're pouring yourself into work, is there something there that your self-worth is driven by doing? Like I have to do, show up,
Yep.
push myself to the limits because that's where my worth is.
Stop holding the mirror in front of my face.
I see you.
I know. It is just, that's the problem. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. Here you are. You are the classic example for it because you've been there. You've done that. And so it's just...
Yes. I actually, one of my strengths is connectingness. So I really, I can see patterns. It's very easy for me to connect the dots for other people. Yeah.
But not for yourself. Oh, beautiful.
It wasn't for a long time. I can now, but still, like you said earlier, it takes time to reflect, right? We have to make that time to reflect.
Yeah.
And
the craziness is, I was the same. I was, when I sat in the clinic, I knew exactly a guy walks through the door. I could read the alcoholic from a mile away. Depression, anxiety. Yeah, I see you. I saw behind the mask.
Grief.
Yeah, absolutely. Could I see it behind my own mirror? Can I see it behind my mask? No. And interestingly enough, it was also, I could never see it in my family. It was all too close.
Mm-hmm.
And even nowadays, I'm struggling with it, in all fairness. Maybe I don't want to see it. Maybe I see so much out there that I want to pretend that I'm living in a beautiful little world where everything is all right. Doesn't work so well. But another thing that you said is there was a lot of connection there, and you connecting with yourself and you connecting with others. And practicing that. I think that is such a beautiful thing that we have not highlighted yet in this interview, because the opposite to addiction is connection. The opposite of suffering is indeed taking action by a serious steps of mental jousting a bit with your own emotions, and then taking action in the sense of having a willingness to say, yes, okay, we deal with this. But equally also, the past is not the future. We are now dealing with it. And in a moment when we have dealt with that, we make a conscious decision to now say, okay, what positive is there? Let's look at something positive. So is there room for positive affirmations? Is there room for gratitude in a grief journey?
Absolutely. Those are tools in the toolbox. They're tools in the toolbox. I think there's, a combination of things that we can bring into our lives that, and for me, that was like, I took different programs. It was stepping stones. Once I committed myself to understanding my past and to learning from my past, one thing led to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And after grief recovery, it's still the same. Like one thing leads to Reiki, led to biofield tuning and energy work and all that, YouMap and all these things that I'm doing and certifications that I've added. They've all, like, one thing leads to the next thing, to the next thing. And this unfolding and growing into the next version of myself.
Which is beautiful. The ongoing journey, and it is so true. So guys, if you're only just now sort of thinking, what the hell are they talking about? please let me reassure you that this journey is one of the craziest roller coaster rides you could possibly imagine. It goes through tremendous amounts of joy and light, and unfortunately, we also through some darkness. But this time, you're no longer the passive victim in that darkness, but you're actually holding the steering wheel, the driver's wheel. You're in the driver's seat, going through that darkness, because you can address things. You can take action, and by taking action and realizing you have got choices, how to feel, what to feel, how to respond to your feelings, that takes you from the victimhood to the survivor. And the more you practice tools, the more you accumulate skills and tools in your toolbox, the more you then become a thriver. And that is so important. And that's even more important nowadays, because we're living in a very uncertain world, and this world is going tits up wherever you look. A lot of things are not going well. Guess what? There's more trauma waiting for you. You like it or lump it. I mean, if the last 2 years with COVID and uncertainty in the world has shown us anything, that the next trauma is just waiting around the corner. But guess what? It's like going to a gym. First time you look at these racks of the weights and you take the lightest weight and you can barely lift it. And you think, oh God. You know, if you actually keep showing up in the gym, guess what? Very soon it becomes actually easier to move these weights. And it's the same with your mental ability to see your own feelings, analyze your own reactions, what your lower brains want to do, the anger, the resentment, the depression, all those kind of things. It's beautiful when you begin to see it, and when you begin to see those reactions as messengers from your soul, from your body. And I think that was the biggest breakthrough for me, to accept that these neurochemicals, they're there for a reason. Often enough because I fucked up, often enough because I actually did not look after myself, and that I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, the halt. Bloody hell. No surprise that I suddenly yearned for a glass. So, it's beautiful. It is beautiful, because here we've got two thrivers. Still from now and then dipping back into survivor, from now and then into the victim. Okay, I'm from now and then going back there. But I realize when it happens. And maybe I allow myself a little bit of a pity party. And then however, I have the skills to go back out of there.
I like the analogy of, what you described as really an act of building our emotional resiliency. And it's deciding, do I want to just glance in the rearview mirror, or do I want to be sitting in the back seat? No, I'd rather just glance, recognize, oh yeah, the past is there. Here it's creeping up. It's showing up in this way. It's showing up in that way, but not allowing yourself to fall back into the back seat, still remaining in the driver's seat. And that's what you're speaking to. And that's the analogy I like to use. It's like, if our life is a car and we're looking in the windshield at our future, how much of the time are we spending looking in the rear view or in the back seat?
And sometimes when you don't know where you're going, you have to look back and actually see how far you have come. And so, again, to stick with that analogy, there is a benefit in looking into the past. So don't just now tape up the rearview mirror. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly. Yes. This is after you've worked through the past and you're Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
No, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Guys, it is. Wow, Victoria, first of all, I have to thank you, because I did not see that coming, actually. I knew this would be an interesting talk with you, but again, we reflected so much, and I have grown in this short little hour. I've grown quite a bit again by reflecting and by holding the mirror in front of my face, having you hold it for me. Thank you. And it is beautiful. I wouldn't have it any other way, because that makes me a different man today, a man who's stronger than he was when I got up this morning. And that's what I love. That's why I am on this journey. And I wouldn't have it any other way. There's too much shit has happened, and too much self-destructive behavior has happened for me to now not embrace the light and do everything in my power to move towards the light. And yeah, okay, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Fair call. Okay, it is what it is. In a positive way, it is what it is. Oh, good. Victoria, if people really gel with you and they want to know more about you and find you, where can they find you?
My website is theunleashedheart.com, and I have links to all my social media on there. I'm at The Unleashed Heart on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and my podcast is called Grieving Voices, and my book you can find on my website too. And I have an online group program starting November 30th. And so I'm excited for that to start.
Unfortunately, the moment we are airing this video, it will be in December. So it will
that's okay.
It will be after that. But I'm sure there will be another program coming thereafter.
Yes.
So guys, don't despair. Just look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast, because you get all of Victoria's links down there. So life is full of opportunities. And if many of the things, or some of the things that we have discussed today, if that rang a bell with you, maybe a painful clang rather than a nice ling. That's okay. That's okay. Maybe that little painful realization is, or maybe today was that discussion, that interview, that voice that you needed to hear to now take action. And I always believe in the 5-minute gardener. If you every single day, go into the garden and spend 5 minutes, never more, never less. But if you do that every day, after a week, you can see quite some change yourself. After 3 weeks, your neighbors will think, whoa, that looks good. And, this is what is happening. We keep going with that. Put work in every little day. Little work, but constant work. You have no idea the cumulative interest that you get. It's beautiful. So guys, I so much want to enjoy you to come onto this ride called life, and life on our terms in the driver's seat. Victoria has built up her momentum in her drive, and she's now leaving a legacy by talking to other people and maybe sharing some of the insights there. What have you got to lose? Check her out, check down there, look into the description of the YouTube video, click those links. Whilst you're down there, before you head off to Victoria, click the like and subscribe button there, because I've got so many fantastic guests coming on, and there are so many beautiful realizations waiting to happen for those who actually come back and join me with my guests, and maybe with some of the other projects I'm involved in. Life is beautiful. That's all I can say. Victoria, thank you so much for coming onto my show. You were, the universe sent you as a reason I had to talk to you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've absolutely loved this conversation. So thank you so much.
Sure. And you guys out there, live with passion and look after yourself. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.